That was embarrassing. I predicted the Kings to win in seven, and the Warriors proved me wrong. But I'll say this: Steph Curry, absolutely amazing. I don't think there's a single defense that can stop. We'll see about tonight when they play the Lakers, but I don't think they're stopping Steph Curry. Absolute superhuman. We're going to be talking about the NFL draft. Texans made a major trade up, but Eagles, they seem to be grabbing everybody from the Georgia defense. Now everybody's facing Harry Rose. This is insane. We'll discuss more. Of course, John, hit that intro. Welcome back, everybody. This is another episode of the I'm a Mission podcast. I'm going to be your host today, Joshua Montero, and it's my co-host on the left side, Corsan Wilson. You notice we have a little bit of a new setup here. We're testing out StreamYard, seeing how it looks. It looks pretty cool, and I think it'll help you follow along as we go for different topics. We're really going to expand into the MLB and the NHL, in addition to largely talking about the NBA and the NFL draft. But Corsian, before we get started, how you doing and what were your first takes like watching the NBA playoffs?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good myself. Yeah, I thought the NBA playoff games are a lot of fun. Obviously, I'm following the Heat the most, and the Heat, they played good basketball. Jimmy, he's the best. He's my favorite player. If you look at our recent Instagram post comment, not description, I say Jimmy is him. I love him. Anyways, yeah, so that's good and all, but yeah, there's a lot of other good games. Just kind of looking back, at that first round, there's upsets, there's not upsets, but everyone played kind of in a way that I said a couple of weeks ago of how just there's a lot of good teams this year in the playoffs, and it really is anybody's game. Kind of looking on to the semifinals, there's again a lot of fun games. Obviously, the Denver Nuggets are kind of looking dangerous right now, being 2-0 against the Phoenix Suns. And then we talked a little, or we polled about the Lakers Warriors game. And so, what do you think of the results that we got, Josh?
Yeah, largely ran away with D'Angelo Russell. I found that a little bit surprising. But if you watch like the Lakers' losses and their wins, and then like how large of a role like D'Angelo Russell played in that, like because averages are like night and day in terms of scoring, and it kind of lines up with what you see on the court because D'Angelo Russell, like he has spurts where he like is absolutely knocking down three pointers like nobody's business. Like he hit like two straight against the Grizzlies in a row that largely steered their momentum towards the Lakers' way. And then he hit three in a row just to catch up to the Grizzlies in a pivotal game five or game four, I believe. I can't remember off the top of my head. But you need those kind of points like outside of LeBron James and Anthony Davis. So I could see why they went with D'Angelo Russell um, as the X factor in the series. Um, and with that said, who do you think's the X factor? Can be from either team, but I don't want you to pick Klay Thompson, Stephen Curry, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, or Draymond Green. Somebody
Yeah.
outside of that.
Um, well, I kind of like how you were saying. Yeah, from like the Lakers, they really need those guys on the outside that can kind of just do their best to match up with like the likes of Klay Thompson, Steph Curry, and so D'Angelo Russell is kind of more of that. Their rangy shooter. I'm obviously like Anthony Davis, LeBron can shoot too, but those guys are really good in the paint as well, and kind of LeBron as well, just a game manager for his team. And so a guy like D'Angelo Russell, if he is hot, he can, you know, kind of take some of the pressure off of LeBron and Anthony Davis. And on the other side for the Warriors, obviously you got Draymond Green, who's good, but then again, it's like those other big men on their team kind of needing to step up. I think is super important for them in order to, um, get a firm grasp on their games.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a solid take. I like how you mentioned Anthony Davis and LeBron like largely succeeding in the paint because that was the formula that worked for them against the Grizzlies, who preferred to let LeBron beat them one on one, and they didn't have the personnel to match their physicality because it wasn't on the court. Like Steven Adams is one of the strongest dudes in the league, and he wasn't available for them. Brandon Clark unfortunately tore his Achilles, so he was not able to suit up this entire like rest of the season. So um, from that perspective, the Lakers took advantage of that fact and beat the Grizzlies as a result. Could not match that output. Um, as far as the X factor, I'm going to go to the Warriors side. I think Kevon Looney was an unheralded part of why the Warriors are moving on to Game 7. If you notice, a lot of the three pointers off second chance points came directly because of Kevon Looney. I think he had like 10 offensive rebounds in Game 7, and then like he had like 20 rebounds total, I think, in Game 6. And when you have a guy that's accumulating like 20 rebounds a game, that's so huge. Like in the playoffs, like rebounds, foul trouble, and turnovers, those largely dictate like how far your team is going to go because not a lot of teams are going to let you go on fast break. Not a lot of teams are going to get you more than one chance. You got to earn it. And he's one of those players on the Warriors who wants it so badly. And I think he's their only hope in order to guard like Anthony Davis and LeBron James in terms of boxing them out, getting those rebounds, starting the break for Steph and Clay to get on a free flowing offense. So I would take on Looney.
Yeah, and just kind of like one last thing for all four of these playoff games, or who do you have winning them?
Ooh, that is tough. I'll be quick on this one. It didn't look good for the Celtics yesterday. They should have won with Embiid out, but I think they underestimated the 76ers and they'll bounce back. They'll win that series.
Hmm.
Heat and Knicks is a tough one. Jimmy's not playing tonight, but I still have the Heat because he's that one X factor that can rise to superstar status. And I know how much you love him, and you know he's gonna go off. Sadly, he can't play today, but hopefully that means for the rest of the series he'll be optimal for
Yeah.
that team. Um, I'm really impressed with the Nuggets offense. This is not. I don't think this is a fluke what they're doing against the Suns. This is not anything new. Jokic knows how to initiate offenses. The offense flows with him, and it's so impressive how he's able to get the ball moving side to side, initiate actions. That is so important in the half court offense. It reminds me of the Spurs.
Hmm.
Like the Nuggets are not moving like the Spurs, but like they have like actions that are really, really good. It is one of the reasons why I led the Celtics last year. And I think it's going to come down to the Celtics and the Nuggets in the finals because they know how to initiate actions in the offense to get multiple players involved. And you could see Jamal Murray and Jokic both thriving in that system. I think
Hmm.
they have what it takes to take care of the Suns, especially when you have that altitude advantage at home.
Hmm.
Lakers and Warriors is a little bit of a tough one to me. That's going to be the closest one out of these four. Um, I'm going to go with the Warriors though because I don't think the Lakers have a defensive answer for Steph Curry. Um, You could easily say the same thing about LeBron James, but Wiggins' length will bother him a little bit, and they still have Draymond Green, who knows how to
Hmm.
adjust on the defensive end. Like
Hmm.
they're gonna do what the Grizzlies did not do on the defensive side, and they will adjust. So
Hmm.
I see the Celtics, the Heat, the Nuggets, and the Warriors moving on to the next round.
Hmm.
Who do you have?
Um, yeah, I'll kind of go quick too. I think between the Celtics and 76ers, I think the 76ers can pull it off and win four against the Celtics. Obviously, I could see this being going to 6 or 7 games, just because both teams are tremendously talented and really, and I think one of those teams will probably be a finals team. And then going to the Heat and Knicks, obviously I'm going to go Heat no matter what. um, yeah, between the Suns and Nuggets, I'm gonna say probably Nuggets too. I mean, I like partially root for the Nuggets. I think they're a cool team. Obviously they have great players as well. Um, and then Lakers Warriors. I think I'd go Lakers here. Feel
Interesting. Okay.
like obviously Warriors are I'd say a better coach team and just better team overall than what the Lakers faced last round against the Grizzlies,
Grizzlies.
right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And but then the Lakers, I feel like um I don't know. I feel like they just felt more consistent, like on a game to game basis, than the Warriors have. Just their last, looking at both of their last series. While like the Lakers had a couple bad games, it's I felt like I saw a little bit more consistency from them than I did the Warriors, which I preferred to see.
Yeah, I'll push back a little bit on that because I think um the Lakers being physical was more trying like in response to like showing the Grizzlies, no, you cannot take us one on one in the paint when you're going against LeBron or Anthony Davis on the offensive side of the ball. Talking about the Grizzlies being on offense. And I think it's a little bit different with the Warriors
Mhm.
because they're, yes, a lot of people will dub them for being an outside shooting team, and they are. That's where they're most lethal. But I think the most impressive part about Steph, who's just like, you could say so much about him. I've always loved the layup packages he's had over the past 3 years that he's developed, but also like his movement, his conditioning, like that is going to be tough to deal with because now he can score at any level of the floor with the same like level of threat that he did from 3 point range. So he's literally a moving artillery unit.
Mhm.
Like it's a little bit different from John Morant, who you know is going to utilize his athleticism, so you can kind of draw a lot of charges. You kind of know where he's going to go.
Mhm.
It's just like sometimes you can't do anything about it because he's too athletically gifted. Um, and then you know Desmond Bane's like a shooter, and you know what Dylan Brooks is going to bring, which is inconsistent shooting on the offensive side. So you take advantage of that. So I think the Warriors are a different story. They're more multi-dimensional, and that's going to cause the Lakers to have problems. But at the same time, I could see a world where the Lakers actually win this one because the surrounding cast is a lot better than what LeBron had in Cleveland in 2016.
Mhm. Yeah. Overall, though, I do think that like most of these games really could go either way. Obviously, the Nuggets
Exactly.
seem
Yeah.
like they're kind of running away with the lead right now, but and I don't imagine they lay off the gas, at all. But like between the other three playoff games, feel like it really is a toss up between both teams.
The Suns do have KD and
Yeah.
Devin Booker. And I get it that Chris Paul just went out with a groin injury, but I would not sleep on Cameron Payne. He's capable of running the offense. And they are KD and Devin Booker are superstars. So
Hmm.
scoring is not the problem for them. We'll see how the Nuggets will react on the road. That
Hmm.
could sway my opinion, but
Yeah.
like if they play with the same technicalities they did on offense, I don't see them losing to the Suns like over the next 5 games, even if it goes
Hmm.
7. Alrighty, so we're gonna transition. We're going to talk about NHL for the first time. We have not talked about NHL at all on this podcast outside of the Patrick Kane trade, so it'll be interesting to see. You won't hide the fact that we're relatively new to NHL. We're not going, we don't watch it as much, but over the past week, I tasked Corsan and I with like identifying like what we saw over the past couple of games, and then what do we think based on how teams fared. So, Corsan, why do you go ahead and get started with what you've seen in the first round of the NHL playoffs, moving on to the second round?
Yeah. So just in regards to the NHL playoffs, I really think that the fact that expansion teams are just able to get into them so quickly are super super cool because we see Vegas Golden Knights, who obviously they're not new, but they're obviously a new team in their first season. They made it really far, and now we see the Seattle Kraken making their great playoff run, which has been really fun. But I follow partially the San Jose Sharks. Just picked that team randomly when I was a kid, and obviously they're not doing super good right now, and so my playoff, or not my playoff, but my hockey knowledge has kind of dropped off since they started to suck. But I like the Broncos, and they always promote their Denver Avalanche team, or the Avalanche,
Colorado
and
Avalanche. Yep.
yeah, Colorado Avalanche. I don't know why I said Denver. I was thinking Denver Broncos. Anyways,
Uh,
the Avalanche. They obviously lost in the first round, which was a pretty big surprise. But obviously it makes for fun, hockey when these kind of superstar teams just kind of get knocked out. I know the Dallas Stars are another just a really good team to look out for. I know they've had tremendous success this past little bit, and it's kind of my main takes on hockey so far.
Yeah, no. Guys, don't be expecting us to give the same analysis we do for football. We will eventually with hockey. We're not there yet. We're moving towards it, but I would say none of the bigger surprises have been that the big thing that everybody's talking about, which is the Bruins like choking a 3-1 lead to the Florida Panthers. I think that's a huge thing to talk about because the Bruins they had the best regular season in NHL history. They won 65 games. They have one of the best goaltenders in the NHL, and then it was Bergeron's last ride, essentially. And unfortunately, he ended up herniating his disc, and we don't know what the future looks like with him, whether he's going to keep playing or retire. But I picked out a couple highlights I saw in Game Seven when going back and seeing what exactly happened, and it was more like you'd be surprising, but like it seems like they got way too comfortable. Like it seems like they got way too comfortable from the regular season game because the coach was like, "Yeah, when we're up 3-2, we had all the momentum. We scored like 3 goals in a row." So from that perspective, you would think you would just want to play keep away, but that did not help them at all because team is trying to punt away pucks, and when you're doing that, you're not focused on trying to initiate like offense to score more and like build on that lead. So you never have to worry about um, what happens if the Panthers tie, and the Panthers end up winning 4-3 in that game in overtime. But I think the main problem, at least from what the coach mentioned, was instead of playing your normal offense, playing how we did in the regular season to close out games, we try to punt pucks away out of fear. And I don't think you can play out of fear. Like you didn't see that from the Panthers, and in particular, I believe it's Matthew Kachuk and Sam Bennett. They played on the front lines for the Panthers, and they were the more aggressive ones. They won their matchups. That was the reason why they even got the scoring opportunities they did, and they moving on because you got to be aggressive in the playoffs. I don't care if it's football, it's basketball, like and NHL, MLB. It doesn't matter when the moment comes, you got to be aggressive, be fearless, and it worked out for the Panthers. Can I keep going? I want to talk about the Rangers and the Devils. That's the talk of the town because I know a lot of friends were really excited about the Devils winning 4-0 in their last game against the Rangers. Obviously, we discussed Patrick Hay moving on to the Rangers and how this would help with their playoff pursuits, but um, ended up not working out. Unfortunately, the Blackhawks don't get a first round pick in return for the Patrick Kane trade, so that's a little bit sad. But you could see the similarities here, like with far as like not even no technicalities here, just who's the most aggressive team, and that was the New Jersey Devils. Like they're the ones who are relentlessly attacking, forcing the Rangers to play their zones instead of like relying on their wingers, like in Kreider and Kane and crew. So when you have a situation like that, they're not used to defending for so long, and eventually that defense is going to crack, and that's exactly what happened. Even though the goalie Chester can play really well, I felt like the teammates let him down. They just gave too many pucks away. And whenever you turn over the ball, just like basketball, like whenever you turn over the puck, bad things are going to happen because then everybody's like stuck with trying to stop the puck instead of realizing where they are. They lose their leverage, and you open up lanes to score. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens in the next couple of rounds. But I thought that was really interesting. Great Cinderella stories we're seeing from the Devils and obviously the Florida Panthers, and we'll see what happens from there.
Yep.
Okay, it's time to do an MLB check-in. We haven't done one in a while, so we'll do one more, and after that, we'll discuss the NFL draft. We promise. But there's a there's a couple of interesting things that happened. There are a couple teams I'd like to talk about that I've noticed that are really interesting. But of course, then before we do that, um, what stood out to you about the MLB teams?
Um, well, Chicago White Sox kind of suck right now.
Oh, come on, man. That was too
they're, just,
dirty.
they're so awful, man. They're
Yeah.
8-21 right now. Obviously, it's not what you hope for. I mean, I partially root for them. It's more so from a rivalry my dad and I had of he rooted for the Cubs, so I decided to root for the Sox a little bit. Obviously, the Cubs, I mean, they're okay right now, but I think just funny. The Sox are not good, like at all. Angels, they're around 500, which in a way is better than expected, despite having two of like the best players in the league. So hopefully they continue playing well. I know what's his name. He was doing really good for them. Like my mind's blanking here. Just a
Probably
second.
Shohei or
Not
Trout.
Shohei. It's not Shohei or Trout. Um, Dang, I can't remember his name, but there's a guy who played really really good this past week for them, and obviously it's guys like those that help them get to that 500 or better kind of record.
Hmm.
So obviously Shohei and Trout are the best on the team and can carry their team to a win, but obviously like on offense for baseball when you're batting, it's up to that singular batter to score or score runs, put play batters on base and everything. And so, um, you need guys to kind of step up and, the field's so big and you got to, you rely on outfielders making sure they get their catches and throwing it in and everything. So it's good to see other players stepping it up for the Angels.
Yeah, I'll give you some time to do a double check, see if the Angels player rings a bell. But I know I touted the Diamondbacks as a team to watch in our very second podcast episode we had. Not the Chiefs one, episode 3. Um, but they are 16 and 13 right now, so that was probably not a wise selection as of late. But you have to realize that the MLB season is very long. Um, it's a game of runs, just like in basketball, over the span of time. And they just acquired left-handed pitcher Pilkington. I have no idea who that is. I'll look into it, see if he's a notable player of note. I've not watched that much of baseball, but there are um, there are 3 teams I want to talk about too in detail. Um, the Toronto Blue Jays are looking very impressive right now. Um, in particular, like um, one of their pitchers, I I think it's Calvin, Calvin something. Let me take a look at that real quick.
Uh,
But anyway, he had 54 strikeouts to 6 walks, and then when I see that, um, that really stands out to me because that means you're not looking to walk players per se, but you're really you're really looking to strike them out or force them in compromising positions for grounders. So that was really impressive. In particular, he shut down both the Yankees and the Mariners in his 2 starts that he had. So, um, oh, it was Kevin Gausman. That's who it was. Kevin Gausman's the one who's really stood out. This is how much MLB we know, guys. So Kevin Gausman's the pitcher I'm talking about had 7 strikeouts against both the Yankees and the Mariners. And the thing that stood out to me is like during that stretch where sorry, he had 11 strikeouts each, but he played 7 innings each during that span. And then when I see that, I'm like, wow, he can really go for a long time. Just set up the relievers. So you don't have to worry about what if the hitters get a beat on what I'm trying to do within like the 3+ innings I have to play because my starting pitcher only played 5 or 6. That stuff's really important to me. So he's becoming a reliable pitcher for them. He's had really good showing lately, and it's a large reason why they're, in my opinion, one of the top teams right now. Um, Also, I like to tout the Baltimore Orioles. I think Jorge Mateo has been really impressive in particular. A lot of scouts had him as like a person who's always had elite speed, like when it comes to base running off of like hits. But he's also shown this year that he can also homer it. What's interesting to notice, like out of his 6 homers and his multitude of singles he's had, is he's always hitting on the left field line. So I don't know like how that's gonna fare like as we move on to the season because a lot of people get a beat on that.
mhm,
So it's more like what are you gonna do when the defense shifts that way
mhm,
and starts to get to those balls more often or makes turns them into grounders. So um, it's interesting to see. And then lastly, the Pirates are 20 and 9. there's not one player you can look at and say, okay, this is the reason why they're 20-9 over the stretch of April. It's insane. And I think you really got to credit the manager for that. They're really well managed. It's not one player that's doing all the work, but those are the three teams, in my opinion, that are really standing out to me in the MLB.
Also, that Angels player, his name is Brandon Drury.
Brandon Drury, okay.
Yeah, this last week he was averaging a what was it, 370 batting average, 4 home runs, 12 RBIs, and so
Wow, that batting average feels good.
yeah, so
370 is good, right?
yeah, 370 is good. Yeah, it's a really solid average, and so obviously players that step up to the plate like that help teams with superstars do what they do. But yep, that's my thing. And then
We'll
also
be
I
we'll
think
be a lot better. Yeah, we'll be a lot better about covering both the NHL and the MLB. We're just
yeah,
dipping into that after draft season,
yeah,
talking about prospects and talking about the playoffs. But with that
yeah.
said, I'm gonna transition to probably our favorite topic of the evening. It's gonna be the NFL draft.
Woo!
What was that, man?
I'm excited for the NFL draft, man.
I could
NFL,
totally
it was
hear
so
it.
fun. I
Yeah,
watched
no,
so much.
I remember like I was bombarding Corsian with texts. Once starting especially with the Texans straight up. Like I was just like, wow, I did not see that coming. I totally thought a different team would come up, get that third quarterback, try to get Anthony Richardson. But
Yeah.
what it just shows is a lot of teams are like behind for the quarterbacks they have. There's a lot of quarterbacks that are already paid. So they probably don't want to invest in a quarterback that high right now because it is high in the first round pick when you move up that high.
Yeah.
Yeah, the rookie contract salary is really, really high. So you gotta be really careful. Like if you're trading up, making sure you get the right player. And
hmm
um, with that said, I had a poll out to see like which teams won the NFL draft, and I listed four of them. I listed the Seahawks, the Steelers, the Texans, and then finally the Eagles. And I know I have a lot of Northeast friends from college that were on the votes, so I thought it would sway towards the Eagles, but surprisingly, it was a tie. Guess who was the second team that tied up? It was
Yeah.
the Texans. It was the Texans. So I was like, okay, that's a worthwhile conversation. Because personally, I think there's not like one team that won the draft per se. You
hmm
also have to look at this as like a 3-year contract between players. I know it's like four in writing, but a lot of teams know what they want to do with the player by that fourth year. And we'll discuss some players that are exercising fifth-year options later. But for now, who do you think stood out in the draft to you?
Just like the draft in general.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, I feel like the tight ends, just in general, as a position, stood out in this draft. A lot of tight ends went early, which kind of showed that what teams are looking for, and like tight ends, like as many tight ends going over like all those other receivers that everyone was talking about beforehand. I think was a huge surprise, especially what was it like? It's like Shoemaker, right? That's his name. That was
Shoemaker, that
draft.
was one of my
Yeah,
sleepers. Yeah.
yeah. He was drafted over a couple other guys that people thought might go first round potentially as a tight end, but um, yeah, I thought it was a really fun class for the tight end position. Um, Teams that needed tight ends went after them. I don't. The Cowboys may have gotten one that might have been really late in the
They got
draft.
Shoemaker.
Oh, Cowboys.
Yeah, they did.
Oh yeah, I don't know what I was thinking. I was thinking maybe another team. Yeah, I don't know.
It happens.
Yeah, yeah, but yeah, I feel like almost most teams that felt like they needed a tight end got a tight end, and then a few teams on top of that got tight ends, and so obviously tight ends take a couple of years to kind of adjust to the NFL, but that was a lot of fun. And then obviously the fall of the running backs in this draft was also a bit surprising to me, or not. Yeah, but
Yeah, I know. A lot of people had like off-field concerns for Zach Evans. One of my favorite players in the draft. I think I consider him a sleeper.
mhm.
So like, I was expecting him to get picked like maybe round 4, round 5, but I had no idea like he'd be. I don't even know when he got drafted. I know the Rams picked him up, but I'm pretty sure it was day 3 pick. Where did he get selected? Let's see.
Zach Evans, 6th round.
Sixth round. Wow. Yeah, that is. He's gonna outplay that contract. I like if he stays on the field. That's the one thing that stood out to me, like you mentioned too, the backs falling. But it's
Hmm.
also another conversation. Like you're looking at what the 49ers did with Elijah Mitchell a couple years
Hmm.
back, and then you're realizing, do we really need to invest in that much capital? Like because Khalil Herbert was a day two pick. The Bears moved on from David Montgomery. They decided, okay, we don't need to, and then they picked Roshan Johnson um, uh, in the middle rounds of the draft. So it's really like I think it's just like a philosophy that most NFL GMs have now. Like we're not going to pick a running back that high unless you're the Lions. so so we'll see. We'll see. But I definitely think the tight end class is well worth it. Like it was good to see Sam Laporta get drafted so high. I had like high grades on him, and then Michael Mayer got put in an ideal situation for himself, considering that he would help out with the running game there in Oakland, not Oakland, Las Vegas. Uh, we're struggling today. We are struggling, but there's a lot of good selections. Um, the Packers took two of my favorite receivers though. One I was really hoping. You guys saw on the IG reel how I was touting up Jaden Reed to the Bears. Jaden Reed to the Bears, please. I did not think he was going to be get picked all the way in the second round. That's a really good selection for them because I can see him playing 1-1, like 1A, 1B with Christian Watson. That's how highly I think of him. Um, and then also they picked up Grant DuBose 2 picks before the Bears did. 2 picks. And I was just like, oh man, if the Bears had granted those as operating as like your fifth receiver
Hmm.
behind the Tyler Scott pick they made, that would have really like closed the room and really made it like to have diverse skill sets because then you're not tied to Chase Claypool anymore
Yeah, I
because
mean,
DeBose offers that skill set.
yeah. Overall, though, I do think the Bears had a really, really good draft class. That's like just really, really underrated. So obviously you start off with Darnell Wright, who he's a great offensive tackle to have for your team. His biggest like benefit that everyone talked about was obviously when you like the highlights of him going against Will Anderson, the guy who went number 3 overall, and he was shutting him down. And
Field
I
his
think
own.
that yeah, he's a phenomenal pick. I thought offensive
Mhm.
tackle was just a really good position overall in this draft, and I think the Bears got one of the better ones, especially with their offense looking more like a power run team, just run focused team. With they draft Roshan Johnson, who again is a solid downhill runner. Khalil Herbert, obviously he's a great running back. Justin Fields is a great running quarterback as well. And so you get a Mauler type player with Darnell Wright, and it's it's game over.
Yeah, no, I really like the pick. They ended up really like focusing on the needs in this draft and identifying who was the best talents that fit those needs. So I love the pick. Um, if it was me playing GM, I would have done a horrible job. I would have picked JSN, and then probably picked like Jaden Reed in the third round or something like that, and, like, and then try to go like offensive tackle in the second round.
Hmm.
But they did a really good job, like really fortifying the lines. Um, I would. I didn't like their defensive line selections. Like I thought, instead of Dexter, they could have got like Keanu Benton or Mozzie Smith. I would have preferred those players. But I see the role that Dexter plays against the run, and I
Hmm.
understand what he does. So I think that was a crucial role. And then I would have also, um, I wasn't a fan of the Zach Pickens pick. I know um, John Michael Schmitz, the center out of Minnesota, like he was still available in that draft, and I thought the Bears also had a need at center, or like they could have gone Zavala as well. Um, and I thought taking Zach Pickens at the third round pick wasn't the wisest choice, but I don't know defense that well.
Hmm.
Like who knows? He might turn out to be like a star in that system next to Eberflus. And when you saw their philosophy on it when they're explaining, oh no, we really want to prioritize the interior line, like the pressure. Then I understood. Okay, edge is not necessarily a priority. You would like them to see the Bears sign someone like Yannick Ngakwe or Frank Clark who got released, but I think that's what they're saving the extra cap for. And um, I really enjoyed the selections they had across the lines. Um, and then I'll go one more. I promise.
Mhm.
Tyler Scott out of Cincinnati, fourth round. It was not the pick I would make because he has some hands issues with catching the ball, but you can't deny his speed. Like he can separate for the best of them. Like he really knows how to turn a cornerback's hips when he's running one way and taking the post route to the other way. He does a really good job for that. So that was a great selection in my mind.
Mhm.
I probably wouldn't have gone that route though. I would I would have I would have went Xavier Hutchinson, somebody like that, where you need like a big body that can also win with speed. Um, and I'll talk about him later. But what did you think of your Broncos selections?
Obviously the Broncos didn't have as many picks as a team would hope, but with the picks that they made, I was really happy with. The first pick they got Marvin Mims, who I was surprised they went wide receiver at first, but I think it kind of shows that for sure KJ Hamler is kind of going away at one point or another for the Broncos. He's not in their long-term plans unless he has some crazy breakout. But in how many seasons? 3-ish, I think, in the NFL. He has like total
Yeah,
of four.
he got drafted back to back with Jeudy. Yeah,
Yeah,
three
he was a
seasons.
second. Yeah, he was a yeah. I think so. Yeah, but anyways, he has like 42 total catches, I think, or less, or something like that. And so, um, obviously, you'd wish to see higher production from a guy you draft so highly. And so, I think this Marvin Mims pick kind of shows that the Broncos are ready to move on from there, especially because you got a really strong boundary guy, with Jerry Judy, who showed that he is an elite player when playing on the outside as rather than in the slot. And you have Cortland Sutton, who's coming back a year from ACL, I think, or just, yeah, ACL injury.
2 years. Yeah.
2 years, yeah. Yeah, and so he's coming back from that. So he should be hopefully a little bit more explosive. And then obviously Tim Patrick's coming back, and he has solid hands, but obviously again it's how quickly can they come back from their knee injuries. And so I think Marvin Mims is a solid pick to kind of fill in roles around the offense, and he can move around there. Drew Sanders is another just great pick that I really like. Obviously, he was in that group of like four, like the top four kind of off-ball linebackers that most people did talk about, and the fact that he went, beginning of round 3, which it's still a day 2 pick, but um, there's a lot of talk about him being mid to early first round, I know, and so getting him there was really great. And honestly, just kind of looking at his stats and kind of his he kind of looks like a budget Micah Parsons, just with his off-ball ability and his pass rush ability. Obviously, missed tackles is an issue, but I feel like a player with just his range and mobility and just being able to be pretty much anywhere in that front 7 area on defense, is a solid guy to get. And then, Riley Moss, he's a great corner. He has good ball skills. I think that's something the Broncos are looking for. Just lack of turnovers, I think, was kind of hard to like deal with. Obviously, got it here and there. Justin Simmons played really well in regards to getting a lot of interceptions last season, but Riley Moss is a guy that you can hope to plug and play right there at either nickel corner or as the number 2 corner on the team, and kind of just help that secondary get deeper. And that kind of goes along with that JL Skinner as well, a guy who can, a safety that kind of fell off the board or fell down the boards because of a pec injury. And so, when he's back 100%, you kind of just beef up that secondary to play good football and allow their pass rush to kind of do what it needs to do.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, your analysis is solid. I think the mids pick is important. You heard Sean Payton earlier talking. It's all talk, so we'll see what happens as we get through the draft. But I mean, not the draft, through the NFL season. Like what they actually do with Jared Judy and Cortland Sutton. It might be a year before they move on from one of them, if not both of them. But it's nice to see that Sean Payton wants them to coexist as options. I think the more options you have, the easier it will be for Russell Wilson to be more efficient with his targets. There are a lot of issues with that team, starting from the coaching last year. So I expect a bounce back season regardless of what happens, because particularly like the coaching change, like you come from Nathaniel Hackett to Sean Payton, you're going to have a lot more consistency on offense for a multitude of seasons. Um, then you also look at um, what the O line looks like from what they allocated in free agency. Javonte Williams coming back. You just got um, who's the kid out of Cincinnati? Samaje Perine.
Yeah.
That's gonna be an underrated selection. So you don't have to rush Javonte Williams back. So I think they made a lot of good moves. Were you surprised that Darnell Washington fell so far, like third round to the Steelers?
Um. Yeah and no, I guess. Well, obviously, he's a phenomenal prospect. He had, he looks great, but then I heard that he had like some medical issue or whatever that really wasn't addressed publicly, but like I guess a lot of teams knew about that, ended up causing kind of the big fall. I don't know exactly what it was because obviously he did well at the combine, and then he did good when we last saw him play football, and so um, not too sure what exactly the medical issue or medical concern that caused him to fall was, but knowing that that happened, like makes me understand why he fell. But I think it was a steal for the Steelers to get a solid guy like him.
Yeah, I think it's especially if you think about what they did with the first round selection, they went with Broderick Jones in 14
Hmm.
pick, and they're used to playing together on the same side of the line. So that's huge. That's absolutely huge for like Najee Harris's prospects. I think he's gonna have a really good year
Hmm.
because they really focused on like the and the run blocking with their free agency picks as well. So um, it's good to see what their philosophy is on helping Kenny Pickett grow.
Hmm.
Like both in the air attack and then also what they're doing with their draft selections. So, um, what was were you surprised that the Eagles went like all Georgia players? Like how easily they got like all four Georgia players on their team?
Yeah. Well, I understand part of the reason why like Nolan Smith fell, and like at least my own personal take is we see Trayvon Walker has a great, I guess, combine and crazy stats, and all of a sudden he goes number one and doesn't necessarily do well his rookie year. And so then Nolan Smith, he's a phenomenal athlete, but then it's also one of those: is he just a phenomenal athlete, or is he gonna like back that up with great plays? Do you understand that?
Yeah,
And so I think that's part of the reason why he didn't go as high in the first round as a lot of people may have expected him to, especially being an edge rusher. Um, so I think that was a big part of it. But obviously, their other picks, Jalen Carter, right, was a great. Didn't they get him?
no, that oh yeah, they did. Until a ninth pick, they traded up with the Bears. Yes, that's right.
Yeah, and so I think that was amazing for them to get Jalen Carter at the ninth pick, and I think a big part of it is when you have players that have played together in the past, it's easier to build that chemistry, especially when they all have great or good college production. When you like bring them all back together, especially with a couple older veterans that have played at elite levels for many, many years, just kind of get this group and like build a solid core basically with these Georgia players that can potentially be your starting defense for the next like 8, 9 years or so.
Yeah, no, I thought Howie Roseman did it again. Like we had
Hmm.
Calais Ringo going the first round in our draft, in our mock draft, and let's see where he ended up. I think he got picked somewhere in the second or third round.
He was a fourth round pick.
No, fourth round pick. They got him in the fourth round. That surprised me. That
Yeah,
really, really surprised me because I was not expecting him to fall that far. I
yeah.
overestimated just talking about now, and then I wasn't expecting Jalen Carter to fall. I thought the Lions would pick him up. I didn't expect the Lions to be their typical Lions.
Hmm.
So that part's really surprised me. Um, yeah, I mean, I look at this team and it's really well constructed. There's a real purpose behind what Howie Roseman is doing with this moves, and it's just super exciting. Like there was one story about how like Jalen Carter could only function at his optimal self, like not I don't want to say mentally, but like get get himself other emotional control and mental control when he was playing alongside Jordan Davis. And guess who Jordan Davis is on? The Eagles. So that was like the one landing spot where like Jalen Carter can thrive. So that's the one spot where you mitigate the risk and you get this elite production where he was touted as one of the best players in Georgia with Jordan Davis, with Trayvon Walker, with Clay Ringo, with Nolan Smith. He was the best one. So I think
Yeah.
those two first round picks in itself blew it out of the park. Blew it out of the
Hmm.
park. Okay,
Yeah. Oh,
now I want to move on to which were the disappointing teams too, because I think that's also important to note. Um, I got two. I'll quickly dive into them. I did not understand for the life of me why Washington picked Emmanuel Forbes at 16. That made no sense to me because guess who picked right after them? The Patriots. They picked Christian Gonzalez. Are you telling me that Emmanuel Forbes is better than Christian Gonzalez? And then also Joey Porter Jr., who got picked much later than him.
um,
Uh,
I for one am a big Emmanuel Forbes truther.
really?
Obviously
Okay.
he lacks a little bit of size that you'd hope for from a corner, but I feel like he is just like I don't know. He is elite range, I guess, as a corner. He's probably one of the best. Like he's probably one of the fastest or most like agile corners that have actual coverage ability. Because you look at Kele Ringo, who is a again, he's a phenomenal athlete, but then you kind of see, especially last season, him lacking in the, I guess, coverage department that you'd hope to see from a guy who's getting ready to go to the draft. But then you see someone like, Emmanuel Forbes, who has that insane athletic ability and can actually cover the guys like in a way that translates to an NFL, I guess, level that you'd hope to see, from these crazy athletes. Because again, you see, especially on the receiver side, you see guys with crazy fast 40 times end up getting drafted a lot higher because of their speed and that, but they kind of just suck as a receiver. But then you see a guy like Emmanuel Forbes who has that speed, but he also does have that coverage and ball ability that I think is somewhat rare and like I don't know. That's why I personally like him, but I do understand why you'd want, a guy like Christian Gonzalez to go ahead of him in the draft. But
Yeah, I'm saying like my attitude is like if you know you want like Forbes that badly, why not just trade down the pick, get more value out of it, then pick Forbes? Because, um, like when I see the Patriots taking Gonzalez 16, and then when I see like Joey Porter getting mocked in the first round for a lot of cases, he ended up going in the first pick in the second round to the Steelers.
mhm,
Um, you could have easily traded down to like the 20s, get your value, trade one of like the Chargers, the Ravens, the Vikings, the somebody like the Eagles who are hungry for like more talent. Get the value out of it from those kind of teams. Then pick Forbes there. I think that would have made a lot more sense. Um,
mhm,
they New England got a really good cornerback. I think it's going to help them out a lot. Like trying to counter the Jets, the Bills, and then what the Dolphins offer to the table. But I was a little bit disappointed by that.
uh huh,
The other team is the Lions. I'm not like as disappointed like personally because as a Bears fan, I'm like, okay, they screwed up with the picks. But as far as locations, they're really talented players. Like Jamar Gibbs is a really Jameer Gibbs, rather, he's a really good player, especially in the passing game. Really good player. But 12 was a little too high. Um, I didn't think they needed to take him with that pick. They had other like needs and values on like the edge defensive line they could have addressed that there as well. So that was a little bit surprising to me.
yeah. I also liked the Lions draft in particular. Obviously, you don't want you think
Oh,
that
I
you can
hated
get
it.
these
I
guys.
hated it.
Yeah, I think like I mean the big consensus was like, oh, you could have gotten these guys later, but if these guys were just personally high on their boards, like why not take them? Especially if you think you can get your other guys that you wanted, which it does look like. They got basically everybody they wanted, and because they had so many high picks, I feel like they could just pick whoever they wanted for their scheme. And obviously, you trade away DeAndre Swift, who hasn't played as well as you would have hoped for him, especially you're looking at, the start of last season, everybody was talking about how DeAndre Swift was like a consensus, like top 5 potential running back in the league, where you're expecting him to be kind of one of the next superstars over the next 5-6 years, but then he can't stay healthy. And Jamal Williams kind of just takes over the backfield just because how he's playing. And so you get a guy like Jameer Gibbs, who I think you could have picked later, I guess, in the draft, but then if the Lions aren't really looking at anybody else in this range, why not take who you might think is your 1B running back?
I thought their second round picks were really good. Don't get me wrong. Like Sam Laporta, I have really highly rated among the tight ends. And then Brian Branch is really, really
Hmm.
good safety. I kind of wanted the Bears to grab him as a third receiver. I mean, third safety.
Hmm.
But I just think of it like when you're valuing running back that high, especially when you have like other needs, like they could have easily gone edge rush this year. They could have gone somebody like Lucas Van Ness, help out Aiden Hutchinson on that side of the ball. Adjust defensive line. They could have easily done that. Um, a lot of people had Jalen Carter going to the Lions. Um, I personally would have picked Jalen Carter at 6, which is partially why I forgot. I was assuming they would pick him at 6. Um,
Hmm.
I would have picked Jalen Carter, or like Will McDonald went later. I would have been fine with that. Kalijah Kancey, if you're looking to trade down and get value. I just looked at the options they had compared to Jameer Gibbs. I'm thinking about like if you want a guy like Tajay Spears or Juice Vaughn, who can kind of do similar things in the passing game that Jameer Gibbs can do. And I think Spears could easily do like the interior running skills that Jameer Gibbs can have. So like I
Hmm.
look at that and I'm saying, okay, would you rather spend a first round pick on Jameer Gibbs, or would you rather wait the third and fourth round and get one of these like mid round backs that really should be starting in the league? So
Yeah.
that's my perspective on it. But I see your point. I see your point.
Yeah. Well, I do also think Jameer Gibbs is a lot more surefire than a lot of the mid round backs because obviously they have, great. Those mid round backs have a lot of potential, but at the same time, there was like one or two big flaws that a lot of those guys did have that I feel like you can kind of minimize or like you can like the flaws that Jameer Gibbs has doesn't necessarily like speak as much volume as a lot of the other running backs did coming into this class, and so um, that's why I feel like Jameer Gibbs is obviously like I think is miles better than almost all the other backs that were taken, especially with how late they were going and just kind of how they were just a lot more flawed. And like I was talking about before, how a lot of these mid-range backs were there's a lot of hype around them because of you're hoping for one of these guys to be good because going into their like most recent year of college, everyone is expecting a couple of these guys to take that next big step in
Mm.
their running back playing ability, but a lot of those guys just didn't, and so that's why they fell so far. I thought more would have gone higher, but it makes sense why they fell, and I feel like Jameer Gibbs doesn't have those same knockbacks that a lot of those other running backs do, and so if you're taking him 12, you obviously have a huge plan to implement him within your offense, and
Yeah, I think like now that you've taken him and now that you traded Swift away, like it's a clear plan that you're going to be shifting towards
mhm,
using him as like the main back eventually down the line, and then like having Montgomery like start out as being that interior runner and then build up that speed where you're going to use Jameer Gibbs. Speaking of
mhm.
DeAndre Swift, I want to talk about who the Lions traded away to acquire Jameer Gibbs, and now he goes to the star-studded Eagles again. We'll call them
Mhm.
the Philadelphia Bill Dogs. Uh, say that 3 times fast, but that you can consider him the fifth player that Philadelphia added from Georgia. Like this one on the offensive side of the ball, but this money's like the Philadelphia backfield a lot. What does this mean? What do you think it means?
um, well, obviously, I feel like Lions really didn't see Swift in their like long-term plans, and they probably weren't going to go and re-sign him after this upcoming season. And so they're like, well, if we're not going to re-sign the guy and we got our guy, might as well ship him out. But then on the Eagles side, obviously you got Rashad Penny is your main guy, who has been known not to stay healthy. Granted, Swift hasn't also been known to stay healthy either, and so I think you're just um, loading up on running backs that you can kind of cycle throughout the season, hoping they all stay healthy and kind of just going on with, I guess, who plays better out of the two of them. And because obviously, Swift is in the last year of his contract, and so it's kind of like low risk, high reward kind of pick, that you're moving on from to get Swift.
Yeah, in terms of like what it does for the Eagles, I think it's a sensible move by them. Take advantage of
Mhm.
that fact, and it's kind of building insurance in case Rashad Penny gets hurt. So I think it's a good move for them. They're now three deep with Penny, actually four deep if you count Gainwell. Um, they have Penny, Swift, Gainwell, and then Trey Sermon at the end. So like they have a lot of depth at the running back position, and you can kind of use like Penny and Swift in different roles. Like you can use them on the field at the same time too. I
Mhm.
think it gives more options to the Eagles. It's going to add to the passing game. Jalen Hurts taking the Swift checkdowns rather than trying to run it himself all the time. So I think it's huge for their offense. If you're looking at it from a fantasy angle, it's going to be very, very confusing. But I think this offense is very efficient enough
Mhm.
where he's going to get the efficient touches he needs to be very productive.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been looking at like a lot of the picks, just in general, kind of going back to the draft, but I feel
Yeah,
like, in my personal opinion, there weren't really too many losers in the draft. In my opinion, I feel like a lot of people, at least from like analysts, are saying that after like the first 20 picks, there isn't that much value to be had in this draft.
I
But
disagree with that.
yeah, I disagree with that as well. Just a lot of guys, I feel like each round had a lot of solid players that could potentially start. um, like even with the Broncos, their seventh round pick that they drafted a center from Oregon, and people are talking about how he could beat out Lloyd Cushenberry for the starting role at center, and I feel like just a lot of good depth within this draft was there that kind of just had a lot of teams, being satisfied with like players that they got. Because I mean, you look at like the Giants, right?
Mhm.
They got Jalen Hyatt in the third round, and same with you get the Cleveland who gets Cedric Tillman right after that. But
Yeah,
um, these guys were talked about as potential first round guys, and I'm sure if there's like a higher demand for receivers, I guess teams might have taken those guys in the first round as well. But you get guys that fall down the board that are quality players, and I feel like more so in like the past like one or two drafts, there's a lot more, I guess, potential superstars lower in the draft than there was in the past. So it gets me excited for how this class will pan out in the next couple of years. And obviously, in a few years, we'll know who of these guys that we were so hyped on as day 2 and 3 picks end up being awful players that don't do anything in the league, and how many actually do well. But I am on the side of these players playing better than in the past that you've seen from these maybe around 4, 5, 6, 7 kind of players.
yeah. There's so many. Like I'm looking at the second/third round now, and third round pick Kendra Miller to the Saints. Love that move. Love that
Hmm.
move because you could literally like he's Kamara's backup. Like right now, that's how talented he is. He is a really good player. I love the value of that selection. Like you mentioned with the Hyatt selection. Um, there's just like one thing we don't know about Jalen Hyatt. Can he win? Um, like when he is like even with a defender at the NFL level and he doesn't have the leverage according to the ball. Can he win outside, like on outbreaking routes, 15 yards down the field, comeback routes? Can he win those routes against like top tier cornerbacks? We don't know that. We know all he does is beat beat defenders, like with his speed,
Hmm.
and he's always wide open. Literally always wide open. He gets by anybody. But I thought in the third round, that's where the value is too. Cleveland's building something too. They're absolutely building something with the wide receiver selection. I love the Tillman pick. I loved it. Um, yeah, I think you easily like lose like the draft in the first round if you pick guys where it's just like, are you projecting or do you know what they are?
Hmm.
So that's why I touted the Lions and the Commanders, but at the same time, like who knows? We could easily be wrong. There's a lot of great selections. I'm looking. Stetson Bennett got picked by the Rams. I love that move. I love that
Hmm.
move in that system for McVay. Like that's because there's nothing wrong with Bennett. Like he just played his system. He's a system quarterback within the Georgia scheme, and he proved like he can play outside that as well. This is like the top type of Brock Purdy selections you're seeing, and I think there was a stat. There was like 12 QBs picked within the first 5 rounds. Teams are starting to see the value of like drafting a QB as a backup or but like third quarterback that's necessary.
Hmm.
So that was just one selection I liked, but another quarterback, DTR Dorian Thompson
Oh
Robinson.
yeah.
he went to the Cleveland Browns. Um, that takes a lot of pressure out of the front office because like DTR was somebody who was a really good like potential QB. Like you
Mhm.
could see it like um I think he has higher upside than Malik Willis. Um,
I
but it takes
think anybody has higher upside than Malik Willis.
yeah, that's true. That's true. I'm just talking about like a comparison
Yeah, yeah,
between the
yeah. No,
two.
I
Like
get it. I get it.
and like it's him sitting behind Watson for like his year when starting out and substituting would be ideal for him, not starting right away. Um, so that was one selection I like deep in the draft.
Mhm.
We can go on and on about this. We really could.
Yeah,
Really could.
yeah.
But in future episodes, I think starting in June, we're planning on doing like a division by division case study where we'll take into account like who are the draft selections, who are the free agency picks by each team within that division, and then how do we see their outlook or what's the team going to look like? Who are the big contributors from that team? We're going to really take a look into that. So there'll be more coverage on this. This is not like our extent of the draft talk at all per se, um, but I wanna I wanna move on to the Ravens. They made a lot of good moves on the offensive side of the ball. With I love the Zay Flowers pick. I can go on and on about that. But what I'm going to be talking about is Patrick Queen's fifth year option to get picked up by them. Um, what do you see his prospects look like? Where do you think the Ravens are trying to go with this?
Well, I think the Ravens are hoping to move on from Patrick Queen. Obviously, you took him in the first round a couple years ago, and I guess he hasn't played up to what you'd hope for from you know a linebacker taken in the first round, especially when you draft a guy like Trenton Simpson, who he has obviously room to improve as well. But you get a guy like him who can play off ball as an off ball linebacker next to Roquan Smith, and I feel like that's what the Ravens are hoping to do, especially with how many, I guess, how deep they are at cornerback, at least right now. Yeah, because I mean, Marshall Lattimore, he's not Lattimore. Marlon Humphrey is a
Marlon Humphrey.
phenomenal. Yeah,
It's
he's a
okay.
great cornerback. He's one of the best in the league, and so you got a solid secondary. You got Roquan Smith, but then after that, you got good pass rush. But Patrick Queen hasn't played or lived up to expectations, and so this is kind of a sign of saying, "Hey, we got a guy who could take over your role," and so kind of play up to your draft stock, or you can leave, and that's what I think about Ravens not picking his fifth year up.
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely leaning that like direction. The one thing I'll push back on is we just saw um, Lamar Jackson get, I think it's a 5 year, 255 million deal. Like
Hmm.
that's like that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. But like when you heard the speculation, like you're just saying, okay, is Lamar Jackson actually getting 133 million? Like, is that the contract we're dictating to him now? Like, what's going on here? There's a lot of speculation and a lot of pushback. Like they were saying where Lamar was going to end up. We were discussing what were the best locations for him on this podcast, and he ended up resigning with the Ravens. They ended up investing in Zay Flowers as a pick, Odell Beckham to add on to what they have with J.K. Dobbins, Rashad Bateman, and Mark Andrews, and I think it's leading that way where the Ravens like their GM philosophy is to play hardball, like get the
Hmm.
value on the players, and it goes with the draft. Get the value in the draft, get the value on the contracts. So this is just another way of saying, hey, if you want the money you're claiming to want, as dictated by the 50 option, you got to play like it. You got to show up on the
Hmm.
field. You can't be not living up to your potential. There's a
Hmm.
reason we drafted you for a reason. So I think this is them being a little bit strict with Patrick Queen, um, but I don't think it's anything out of the ordinary unless like he completely underwhelms the season. So this is more of like a wait and see approach. I
Hmm.
don't think it means like anything at all.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're gonna talk about Jerry Jeudy, who did get his fifth year option picked up by the Broncos. That's probably got to be exciting to hear, right?
Yeah. Obviously, there's a lot of talk about um, Jerry Jeudy or Cortland Sutton getting traded this offseason. And I think from the Broncos front office, it was more so. seeing if any teams are willing to overpay for any of those two receivers. But in general, I don't think they were like shopping them out. And so we kind of see this with, Jerry Jeudy getting his fifth year. And we kind of saw at the end of the season too how good he was playing. He's playing as one of the best receivers in the league, just getting open, especially with just how awful the Broncos offense was last year. And I think a big change in his production came from how the Broncos for a while were playing him a lot in the slot. And while he is a phenomenal route runner and could be, is probably a good slot receiver, he definitely does shine a lot more on the outside. And again, we saw that at the end of the season when, he was basically breaking out. And so I think with this fifth year, the Broncos are hoping that he kind of continues that, especially with the Sean Payton offense and just kind of having a great season, proving that he can be, the top receiver for this Broncos offense. Yeah. Excited for the
No,
Broncos
I
this year.
agree. I agree. Yeah, I am too. I'm too. I think they're gonna have a bounce back season. I think this is more like Sean Payton saying, I don't know what this receiving room looks like.
Hmm.
So just invest in them for this year and then we'll see what they look like. And then Payton made the decision to pick up his fifth year option. And George Payton.
Yeah.
But I think I agree with you. He was a lot more reliable than Cortland Sutton was towards the end of the year, and I think it's the Broncos rewarding him for that, and then also saying, okay, what do you look like when we have an actual offensive system in place? Can you
Hmm.
drive? Can you execute to our schemes that are being in place? And I think along with the Marvin Mims pick and then Cortland Sutton and then Tim Patrick coming back, these are all like situations where it's like they're not tied to Jerry Judy beyond this year. So um, I'm maintaining the same perspective I am with Patrick Queen. This is okay. We trust you. We're gonna pick up your fifth year option, but your production is gonna dictate the salary beyond that. So this is more like a 1 year tryout, but with confidence.
Yeah. But hopefully Broncos
Any
do good.
yeah.
Yeah.
What were you saying about the Broncos? Like what were you hoping to go in that direction with the receiving room?
Yeah. So obviously, like, I don't think KJ Hamler is staying long term. Obviously, I love Kendall Hinton, Hall of Fame quarterback turned wide receiver. um, but yeah, so obviously, a big part of the Broncos off receiver core was hurt on and off last season, and so again, that's why you see the Broncos. They take wide receiver in the draft, and then you're trying to keep guys around, especially just because I do think the Broncos like have the potential to have an elite receiver core, just with like the range of talent that they have. But the issue is just, like a lot of players get hurt or just haven't lived up to the necessary expectations that people had for their draft stocks. You have Cortland Sutton and KJ Hamler, who I believe are second round picks. Jerry Judy's a first round pick. Now you got their new guy who's end of the second round, and then I mean obviously
I
Tim
believe so.
Patrick.
Yeah.
He was I think he was undrafted, picked up by the Ravens, and then went to the Broncos. But anyways, but outside of him, you have a lot of guys that have a lot of high draft stock and high draft cap or have high draft capital, and um, you just want to try to keep as many guys as you can for like the right price in hopes that one of these guys can break out. And so I think Jerry Jeudy is the closest to like having consistent good games, and so it makes sense why they want him back.
Yeah. No. The Marvin Mims pick, they picked him up in the end of the second round, but
Mhm.
um again, I think it's a vote of confidence. I think they think he could play. They just
Mhm.
don't know what does it look like? What does his salary look like? Is he
Yeah.
among the top receivers in the NFL? Like you don't want to allocate that money for someone where you haven't seen it yet, like in a
Mhm.
consistent, stable offensive scheme.
Yeah.
So we'll see where this goes.
Mhm.
Any draft sleepers you want to throw out there based on landing spot before we say
Um.
bye to people?
Yeah. One last thing, I guess. I like the Jake Moody pick. It's kind of
Jake
fun.
Moody.
Yeah, the
Jake
kicker out of
Moody.
Michigan going to San Francisco.
Because he was a kicker.
Yeah, and he was a good kicker in college. So
Why
I'm
not
excited.
Ryland? Ryland was picked a couple after him in the fourth round by the Patriots.
Um, I think Jake Moody has potential to be an elite kicker in the NFL. Um, he's the type of guy that didn't miss in college. Because that's the biggest knock on all college kickers. It's they keep on missing, and that's why teams go for two. Or it's there's the infamous touchdown return kick, field goal. And so
Yeah,
you get a guy,
yeah,
and so this is kind of like the thing with college kickers. But then you get a guy like Jake Moody, can kick, and you're hoping that he's your guy for the next decade, and that'd be pretty nice. But I thought it was a fun pick, especially you don't see a lot of kickers go that high.
yeah. I'm always like, really? Are you valuing these guys like in the third rounds? Like, I'm just like, I wouldn't pick a kicker in the third or fourth round. And I'm just like, okay, if it's a compensatory pick, like in the sixth or the seventh round, then yeah, that makes sense. I mean, like, what's the reason for picking them so high? Like, Chandler Savala got like picked 2 picks after Chad Ryland.
Hmm.
Like, you could have picked up him. Like, you could have, let's see, San Francisco. Um, they could have picked up an edge rusher just to add on to that. Like, and
Yeah,
then picked up Moody like a round or two later or something.
yeah, but
I didn't
like,
really understand that.
but like hypothetically, he's as good as Justin Tucker. Would you not take the risk or take the shot at taking him in the third round to
No, I
secure a
wouldn't. I would take it in the fifth round and exercise as much value as I can.
and risk another team taking him earlier?
uh,
Like
yeah,
if
yeah.
the Bears had Justin Tucker, there wouldn't be the double doink.
Oh, good God. Okay, you went there. Ah, I'm so
Yeah,
mad. I
just
was already
saying.
mad about the Green Bay pick, but
Yeah, but that's all I got.
we
Yeah,
did have our Justin Tucker. We had Robbie Gold and we let him go, but that's a story
yeah,
for another day. Um,
yeah.
as far as sleepers, I always like to throw them in there. Um, I'm gonna take a quick look at the chat and see who we got. Yes, I mentioned Xavier Hutchinson. I was trying to figure
Oh
out
yeah.
um, where I thought he got picked in the fifth round, but he ended up going 205 to the Texans in the sixth round. I really love this pick. It's one of the reasons why I thought the Texans are major winners, if not like the best winners of the NFL draft, because you trade up to get like the best defensive player in the draft. Then you pick your quarterback,
Mhm.
CJ Stroud. Everybody knocking on him saying, "Oh no, he's not a second overall pick. I'd rather pick Will Levis in the second overall pick." I never understood that. Um, but like Xavier Hutchinson, you get him this late, he can play a starting role, and for a sixth rounder, that's all you can ask for. He can play all three levels of the field. He can release. He has size. He has the speed to separate, not to run in a straight line 40 yards. These are all tools that are gonna help him and CJ Stroud. Don't forget, John Mechie's coming back as well. They already have Nico Collins. They drafted Damian Pierce from last year. They added Devin Singletary, I think, to that
Mhm.
offense.
Yeah.
And then they just added Dalton Schultz, a tight end. The Texans have something building, man. They have
Yeah.
something building. And this is going to be a starting receiver, I believe, for the next 7 years on that team. That's how highly I think of him. So that's a sleeper to watch. Um, but thank you guys for watching. Um, I know our times have increased every single episode, so we try to keep it under an hour and a half. Uh, we'll try to keep it around an hour or so for future episodes. But we thank you for tuning in. Before you go, just make sure you like, comment, or subscribe. If not all three, we would greatly appreciate it. That way, you never miss when an incoming video is coming on. And make sure you follow our Instagram channel at Amon at Amon dot a mission. All dots between Amon a and mission. And stay tuned because we're gonna upload on Spotify once again. I'll add a banner for that. At Amon dot a dot mission. That way I don't stutter over my words a bunch of billion times like I've done already. That's the Instagram name.
Yep. Follow us, please.
Yeah, we need the moral support. But for next week, you can expect more talk on the NBA playoffs, round two. We'll have more talk about the NHL as well and the MLB. Um, we'll dive into more about our sleepers on what we think from a fantasy standpoint, what we're looking at. We're thinking about doing some mock drafts over the summer. Maybe not immediately because still got like training camps to settle. From fantasy perspective, I thought that'd be fun. I know Corsian, you've thrown out the dynasty idea, starting like a dynasty league. That'd be fun to share. Comment below what other topics you want us to delve into. We haven't talked about soccer. I don't know if that's in our plans right now, but that would be very interesting to get into as well. I know the next Ted Lasso episode is coming tomorrow, so I'm super excited about watching that. But Corsian, any last thoughts? Anything you want to tell the people?
We love you all. Thank you for watching us and listening to our voices.
Yes. Speaking of which, we will have Spotify podcasts on soon. We're setting that up as we speak. So when we don't have like video film that we're planning to implement later in our YouTube showcase, then you can also listen to us on those Spotify cams. So stay tuned for that. With that, we're gonna wish you a good night. Take it easy, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.